The Ronald Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California today played host to a televised debate of the Republican hopefuls vying to take on Barack Obama in the presidential election next year. And all eyes today were on the new frontrunner, Texas Governor Rick Perry, and the old frontrunner, former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, who is now just trying to stay in the race. The two traded blows on who was going to be best qualified to manage the American economy and create more jobs.
He had one of the lowest job creation rates in the country. So the fact is, while he had a good private sector record, his public sector record did not match that. As a matter of fact, we created more jobs in the last 3 months in Texas than he created in 4 years in Massachusetts.
Well, states are different. Texas is a great state. Texas has zero income tax. Texas has a right-to-work state, a Republican legislature, a Republican Supreme Court. Texas has a lot of oil and gas in the ground. Those are wonderful things. But Governor Perry doesn't believe that he created those things. If he tried to say that, why, it'd be like Al Gore saying he invented the Internet. Look.
Poor old Al Gore, they're still going on about that. Meanwhile, the only woman in the running at the moment, ultra-conservative Michelle Bachmann, barely featured in the debate. Joining us now, James Fallows, who has for at least the last 30 years been with the Atlantic Monthly. Prior to that, he was with another president, Jimmy Carter. Now, James Fallows, being at the Republican Presidential Library today, this couldn't be any more of an audition to see who gets to play Ronald Reagan next year. What did you make of it?
I thought this was important in the U.S. because it was Governor Perry's first real appearance in the pressure of a debate, and I thought that he didn't really do that well. It was a reminder to him that it's much different to operate on the national stage than it is in a state even as big as Texas.
Now, Rick Perry, a lot of people sort of saying that he's captured the Tea Party vote away from Michelle Bachmann. She's now just a summertime thing, and they're moving on to a serious candidate. Is it down now to Perry and Romney that we saw there?
It's still almost a year until the conventions, and more than a year until the election, and a lot can change in that time. But certainly it seems as if the three former governors, I say Romney, Perry, and Huntsman, are probably the ones who have the most gravitas. You could see Romney and Huntsman, former governors of Massachusetts and Utah, playing as if they were arguing to the general election crowd, not just the Tea Party base, whereas all the rest, notably including current Governor Perry, were making the very strongly conservative pitch.
Huntsman. Now, Jon Huntsman barely rates, I mentioned he barely rates 1% in the national polls still. A lot of Republicans say, what's that Democrat doing on the stage? This is a Republican debate. Tell us a bit about him. Well, has he got a chance?
Most people think, including me, that he's not a likely nominee this time. He was a successful governor of Utah, and President Obama appointed him as the ambassador to China, a Republican serving a Democratic president. It was seen at the time as quite a coup for Obama to have done this. Governor Huntsman can speak Mandarin. He was a Mormon missionary in Taiwan. He was a very popular ambassador in China. So this was seen as a way of getting him off the stage as a potential challenger to President Obama. He's coming back now, and his argument essentially is that if he could get the nomination, he would be a stronger candidate against President Obama in the general election. But at the moment, the fact that he worked for Obama and that he's relatively liberal on environmental matters and on gay marriage has given him some problems in the Republican base.
It seems to be something Democrats are quietly hoping that it's going to be Rick Perry rather than Mitt Romney or Jon Huntsman that gets the nomination, because while he may work well in Texas and Republican, the base of the party will love him, maybe not the general electorate.
It's very difficult to handicap these things. I remember when I was working for President Carter these many eons ago, Democrats actually hoped that Ronald Reagan would be the nominee in 1980 because they thought he would be too extreme, even though he'd been a two-term governor of the biggest state in the nation. And so it is, you can overthink these things, but in last night's debate, Governor Perry made a couple of claims that I think would cause him problems in the general election, notably saying that the most popular government program in the U.S., Social Security, was a failure and a Ponzi scheme. And Governor Romney really pushed him hard on that to make sure he dug in on that position, and that could cause him some troubles.
Do you see other historical echoes? Is 2012 going to be 1980 all over again? Is Barack Obama another Jimmy Carter?
I think if there were a parallel for President Obama, and again, it's very difficult to make these comparisons because there are so few presidents and so few elections, and every situation is different, but probably the specter he's more fearing right now is that of the first George Bush. who was a success in some of his international efforts. He was very, very popular after the first Gulf War. And then because of an economic stagnation, he obviously lost to Bill Clinton. The difference is that the first George Bush had to face Bill Clinton, who was quite a formidable political talent. And none of the Republicans yet seems to have that same kind of raw, historic, just animal spirit as a challenger to President Obama.
Ronald Reagan, he looms so large. I mean, they couldn't make the point any better by having this debate today in a hangar that has Reagan's old Air Force One in it. There's a model of the Oval Office just around the corner from it. I mean, are they vying to be Reagan, do you think?
Sure, and it's significant that when we now look back on Ronald Reagan having been a two-term president and winning his re-election race in a landslide, that of course it was fated that he was going to win in 1980. That was actually a very close election until the last time. It was the fact that the failed hostage raid when Jimmy Carter was trying to rescue the hostages at the embassy in Tehran, a number of other things. But until about 6 weeks before the election, it was seen as a toss-up. So the mantle of Ronald Reagan now seems all-powerful and all-holy, but it was a closer matter at the time.
Do you still think it's the case that the presidency can only be won from the centre, despite elements like the Tea Party?
I think, yes, that it's been historically, we have the extreme examples of Barry Goldwater in 1964 and George McGovern in 1972, who sort of captured the id of their party and were so far on the extreme that they were then beaten handily. And so it's still the conventional wisdom that you have to run to the centre in the general election because, for example, a very substantial share of the American electorate now is non-white. The Republican Party is almost exclusively white. When I was watching the debate, I didn't see any non-white faces in the audience. There might have been some, but I didn't see.
There's Herman Cain on the stage.
There's Herman Cain, yes. But he's so they have to get some non-white votes, and that requires some running to the middle. So. Running against Social Security is not going to be a good way to win in the general election campaign. And so, interestingly, Governor Romney really pushed on Governor Perry to make him dig in on that, feeling that it would handicap him.
Tell me the Obama organisation that we heard about when he won the election, we haven't been hearing about much now. And all we're hearing about is that things are looking very, very difficult for him. How important is that whole structure that he set up?
I think it's very important, and on the one hand, he now has the advantages of incumbency, which are considerable. That he'll be able, after this relative squabbling last night, then 12 hours from now or so, he'll give his speech to a joint session in Congress, and there's a greater augustness that comes with the office of presidency. The two things he doesn't have anymore are, first, the sense of infinite promise. When he was running in 2008, he was was the first non-white president, and there was this sense of transformation, and his motto was "Change you can believe in." It's harder to say that now because of just all the impediments of being president. The other is the network, the fundraising network that he had before is a little harder to put together because there isn't, again, the same sort of crusade sense that he had with his original campaign. So I think that he'll probably have a big money advantage over the Republicans, but there's not that sort of passion that he had the first time.
And where does his money come from?
It comes from the, it will be a number of organizations that just feel as if they are better served with him in office than the Republicans. So, and a number of small donors, too.
So where's corporate America in all of this?
Corporate America is not as much on his side as they were 3.5 years ago.
Do they pick favourites, or do they just try and back a winner?
I think that they are generally Republican. It was significant they went against the Republicans in 2008, and so I think they will try to see what will be the best steward for the management. When the Republicans have been courting, violating the debt ceiling and things of that sort, I think there's been some corporate fear of them.
Is there a danger that the Tea Party movement within the Republicans are going to put off relatively moderate Republicans, split their vote in effect?
Yes, and so I think the Democrats in their hearts, their ideal candidate would be Michelle Bachmann, because they figure that she has no executive experience and has the least national experience apart from Herman Cain in the group there. But if the more extreme...
Sarah Palin, surely.
Well, Sarah Palin was a governor. Michelle Bachmann has just been a congressional representative, so Palin had limited executive experience. So Palin probably might be an even more cherished candidate for the Democrats, but they recognize that the Republicans are going to have to come back somehow to the center if they want to win.
Now, we've only got a minute or so left. I'll ask you, James, tomorrow's speech to Congress that you allude to, what does President Obama have to achieve in this? It's all about jobs, jobs, jobs.
Yes, I mean, that's the thing he has to do, and it's a very difficult balancing act, because on the one hand, he has to to try again to have some sort of bipartisan effort, even though no Republican has voted for anything that he's proposed in the last 2 years or so. So he has to offer that, but at the same time say that even if he doesn't get any kind of cooperation, there's still things that he can do. He's not just a entirely defanged figure for the next year. So that is the balancing act I'll be watching.
And are they going to give him anything, given that they want to beat him next year?
I think the more he can do on his own authority as president, as opposed to looking for legislation, that's where he'll have to find his strength, I think.
Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us, James Fallows. Thank you all, panellists. That's all the time we have for The Drum for tonight. Michael Veitch, Jacqueline Wilcox and James Coolemans as well. You can check out our website at any time at all, abc.net.au/The Drum, and you can follow us on Twitter as well, that old hashtag The Drum. Take part in the conversation online when we're on the air. I'll see you next time.